Today, we're putting together a playbook for what might be one of the most critical financial periods of your entire life, those last 5 years right before you retire. This is really where decades of saving and planning suddenly meet these huge real-world decisions that are going to shape everything that comes next.
All right, let's just dive right in with a question that I know hits home for so many people. You're in what experts call the retirement red zone, that super crucial 5 to 10-year window before you punch the clock for the last time. And believe me, the decisions you make here, they have way more impact. This whole mortgage dilemma is just a perfect example of the kinds of tough calls you're going to face.
So to make this whole explainer really hit home, we're actually going to start with a real question from a Reddit user. It perfectly captures that financial and emotional tug of war that pretty much defines this whole pre-retirement phase.
So get this. This person has done so much right. I mean, they've got over $1 million saved up, but they are completely stuck on this one single huge decision. What on earth to do about the remaining $450,000 mortgage? And here's the kicker. It's at a 3% interest rate. That low rate is what makes this choice so incredibly difficult.
You know, it really boils down to that classic conflict that's right at the heart of personal finance. It's the math versus the mind. It's your head versus your heart, right? On one hand, the numbers, they scream that you can probably earn way more by investing the money. But on the other hand, that feeling of walking into retirement completely debt-free, wow, that is powerful. There's just no easy answer here.
Okay, so before we can even begin to solve this mortgage puzzle, we've got to take a step back and understand how you'll actually get paid in retirement. I want you to think of it like you're building your very own paycheck, and the first building block is the money you've managed to save.
So here's the most important question. How much can you safely spend from your nest egg every single year without it running out? Well, that number is called the Safe Withdrawal Rate, or SWR. And honestly, it's a cornerstone of retirement planning. The whole idea is to make sure your money lasts as long as you do.
A really simple way to think about this is something called the 25x rule. Basically, it comes from the famous 4% rule. And all that says is you can withdraw 4% of your total portfolio in your very first year of retirement and then just adjust that dollar amount for inflation every year after that. It's a fantastic starting point to figure out, hey, am I even on the right track?
And you know what? The historical data really backs this up. What you're looking at here are the findings from the legendary Trinity study. It found that a 4% withdrawal rate had a ridiculously high success rate. We're talking over 95% for portfolios that had at least half their money in stocks. And a 3% rate? Yeah, historically, that's been pretty much bulletproof.
But your portfolio is only half the story. So let's talk about the second pillar of your retirement paycheck. For most people out there, this is every bit as important as their personal savings. And trust me, the decisions you make about this one, they have lifelong consequences.
And wow, this chart just lays it out so clearly. Timing is everything. Look, if your full retirement age is 67 and you decide to claim at 62, you are locking in a permanent 30% pay cut for the rest of your life. But for every single year you wait past 67, you get an 8% raise. If you wait all the way to 70, you get a 24% bonus on top of your full benefit. That is a guaranteed inflation-adjusted return you literally cannot get anywhere else on the planet.
All right, so we've got our income sources mapped out. Now let's put this stuff on a timeline, because those 5 years leading up to retirement, they are just jam-packed with key dates and deadlines that you absolutely positively cannot afford to miss. This timeline really highlights those critical moments. See, at age 50, boom, you can start making those catch-up contributions to really supercharge your savings. Then at 59.5, that annoying 10% early withdrawal penalty, poof, it's gone. Age 62, that's your first shot at Social Security, and of course, 65 is the magic number for Medicare. Just knowing these dates, honestly, that's half the battle right there.
Okay, so now that we have this whole framework for how a retirement paycheck is built, we can finally go back to our original dilemma, but this time with a much clearer perspective. Let's really dig in and see how these different arguments about the mortgage actually play out. So first up, let's talk about the math argument. From a purely numbers perspective, the logic is really hard to argue with. I mean, why would you rush to pay off a 3% loan when you could take that exact same money and invest it to potentially earn 5%, 7%, or maybe even more? Mathematically speaking, you should come out way ahead by just keeping that cheap debt and letting your money work harder for you.
But we all know personal finance isn't just about spreadsheets and numbers. For a lot of people, the emotional security, that feeling of owning your home free and clear, is priceless. This user, for example, paid off everything, and that feeling of gratification, that peace of mind, that was worth more to them than any potential gains in the stock market.
Then you have the risk argument, and this is a big one. Remember that retirement red zone we talked about? Well, a major market downturn right before you retire can be absolutely catastrophic, mainly because you just don't have the time to recover. So paying off your 3% mortgage, that's like getting a guaranteed risk-free 3% return on your money. And when you're on a short timeline, that kind of certainty can be incredibly appealing.
And finally, there's a kind of middle ground, the flexibility argument. Instead of paying down the loan or investing all of it, this person just saved the cash. And what does that do? It keeps all their options open. They've got the money sitting there to pay off the mortgage anytime they want, but they also have this big liquid safety net in case something unexpected happens. It just goes to show you there really is no one-size-fits-all answer here.
So you've got all these competing ideas swirling around your head. How in the world do you decide on your final move? Well, the answer is pretty simple. You stop guessing and you start planning. And you do that with a concrete checklist.
Really, the key takeaway from all the best financial advice out there is to be deliberate. Get that retirement budget finalized for real. Max out every dollar of those catch-up contributions. Build up a cash buffer, say 12 months of expenses, to ride out any market bumps without panicking. And please, get your Social Security and healthcare strategies completely locked in. This isn't just a list. It turns a vague goals like retire someday into a real, actionable plan.
And that brings us right back to where we started. The right answer to the mortgage question, and frankly to most big retirement questions, it all comes down to what you value most. The math might be crystal clear, but the choice is deeply personal. So what will you value more? A bigger portfolio on a spreadsheet or a better night's sleep? That's the real question you have to answer.